So I'm going to go ahead and get started. This session for our Academic Advising Awareness Week is called Surviving and Thriving in Anatomy and Physiology, Best Student Practices. So this is going to be focused on Bio 168 and 169. And so Bio 168 is a 2-semester anatomy, or is the first semester of our Human Anatomy and Physiology course, and Bio 169 is the second semester of our Human Anatomy and Physiology course. Bio 168 kind of covers the introduction and the first half of the body systems, and Bio 169 is going to cover the remaining part of the body systems. These are really important courses for students that are interested in going into healthcare careers, especially the nursing program, as well as some of the health and fitness science majors need them. So just check with your advisor and see. We do have some other anatomy and physiology classes too. And the information in this session is like Bio 163, Bio 161. The information in this session applies to them also, but it's focused more towards the Bio 168 and Bio 169. They are a very in-depth anatomy. It's 2 semesters to cover the body, whereas Bio 161 and 163 cover the whole body in 1 semester, and they're not quite as detailed. So just make sure that you talk to your advisor and figure out which exact anatomy and physiology course you need for your major. That's probably like the first important thing to do. Once you do figure out that you need to take these anatomy and physiology courses, and if you're planning to apply to, like, say, a nursing school that is not at Wake Tech, that's another nursing school, or in another state or another university, we definitely recommend going ahead and talking to their advisors over there too, just to make sure that you're taking all the right courses. So once you do figure out that Bio 168 and 169 are right for you, you're going to want to start with Bio 168 first, right? And that's the prerequisite for Bio 169. It's the first one to take. And so once you start registering for classes, this is the first thing that you should be thinking about. How many classes should you take along with your A&P classes? Now, if you are in the nursing program or are familiar with the nursing program, they use a point system in order to, and you earn points based on the grade that you get in each different course. And your bio courses are going to be worth more points than some of your other courses. So these bio courses, your anatomy and physiology courses, microbiology, things like that, are going to be worth a little bit more. And so you want to make sure that when you take these courses that you're going to get the best grade you can in order to have the most points you need to apply to these competitive programs. And if you're applying to a nursing program or another health sciences program somewhere else, you'll also want to make sure to have, the best grade you can for your GPA. So the short answer is don't try to do too much at once. A&P is important. You need to make sure to take the time you need to really learn it and get a good grade. And it's not just about making the grade and getting through it. It's about understanding the concepts. Because if you don't understand the basic anatomy and physiology, you're not really going to be able to understand, how it breaks, which is like what happens to your body in disease. And then it's going to be really hard to understand how to treat it. So this is sort of like one of the foundational courses that you're going to need for the rest of your healthcare career. And so you want to make sure to try to slow down, don't try to take too many courses at once, and make sure that you really understand it to get a good foundation. It's also a really good idea to make sure that you really understand 168, which is the first anatomy and physiology course, before you move on to 169. You do have to make at least a C in Bio 168 in order to progress to Bio 169. But it will definitely be to your benefit if you really understand the material, because Bio 169 can actually be a little bit more challenging than Bio 168, and so it's definitely helpful to understand those underlying concepts before you move on. So once again, it's going to be complicated, and exactly how many courses you should take is going to depend on how much time you have available to you to study. So that's one. What previous experience you have with anatomy and physiology. So, if you've taken it before, it's just not in your 5-year window and you have to retake it, then, you'll obviously you may be able to learn the material faster. Or if you took AP anatomy and physiology in high school, you're going to have a little bit more of those concepts, and you may be able to learn this and assimilate the information a little bit faster. But you also have to take into account what other responsibilities you have. A lot of students, this is a community college, and a lot of students are non-traditional students. So they're not full-time students, and they may work full-time, and they may work part-time and have a family responsibilities, or they may be a full-time caregiver to young children, which is a full-time job. And so if you work full-time or you're a full-time caregiver for young children, and this is sort of your first time going back to classes, you should probably just start with taking one class at a time and see how that goes. I would also say that if you took one class before and it went well, some classes don't require as much of a time commitment as anatomy and physiology requires. So Bio 168 and 169 require a significant time commitment on your part. It is a lot of information to take. So I definitely recommend sort of erring on the lower side when you're registering for courses and not trying to fill your plate with too many courses at once. Because at the beginning, let's say you register for 3 or 4 courses and you start getting behind in all of them, then it's not going to put you on a good foot. Even if you do end up dropping, another course to focus more time on A&P, you're already a little bit behind. And it's just, you're already stressed out. So I definitely say less is more when you're taking courses with A&P. And sometimes it should be your only course, depending on what other responsibilities you have. As I said, if you have a job, a family, or both. If it has been a while since you've been in school, then you might want to start with a class, another one of your prerequisites. Get that under your way, like get used to how Blackboard works, how taking courses at Wake Tech works. Get used to all of that sort of before you jump into Bio 168. Bio 168 is like an interesting and important one, and a lot of people want to start and jump right into it. But I think it's probably better to kind of ease into like coming back to school and see if you have any other. There are some prerequisites for Bio 168, so you could take one of the Chemo 90 or one of the other bio prerequisites just to kind of get a feeling for being back in school and how much time you're going to need to devote to studying and how you're going to juggle your different responsibilities. So I don't always recommend starting with those anatomy and physiology courses as the first one you're taking when you're coming back to class after a long period out. So the other thing to think about is that we have a couple of options for Bio 168. So most often during the fall and spring semester, they're offered as a 16-week course. But sometimes they might be offered as like a mini semester, like a shorter 8-week course. So this has often happened over the summer, or sometimes the second half of a fall or spring semester, you might have an 8-week course. And although an 8-week course it's a really great way to get your courses done faster, the problem is it can be a lot more challenging. And because, right, it makes sense. You're learning the same amount of material in half the time. And so that means you have less time to do assignments, less time to read the book, less time to really learn the material, less time to study, and then the tests are coming at you pretty quickly. So it can be really easy to get behind in an 8-week course. And so I only really recommend 8-week courses to experienced students. So you've taken these college classes before, you know what you're doing, you know how to use, the learning management system, Blackboard, things like that. And you have a lot of time dedicated to studying. So especially if you're a full-time student, this might be something that's good for you. If it has been a while since you've been in school, I don't recommend starting with an 8-week course just because it's, especially for Bio 168 and Bio 169, because it is such an enormous amount of information to take in at one time. So I would recommend taking it as a 16-week course. The 16-week course does take a little bit longer, but you have just more time to read the book, understand the material, get the assignments done, and really cement that information sort of into your brain before moving on. And guys, feel free to stop me if there are any questions. So I'll try to keep an eye on the chat and see. All right, I will move on to our next slide. All right, so the other question that I get is, what if English is not your first language? So we have a lot of people that have moved here from other countries, other areas, or English is not their first language, or they're English language learners. And because of this, it can just put you at a little bit of a disadvantage because it takes a little more time to learn and process the material. And so you'll need to take this into account when planning your study schedule. Anatomy and physiology, at the beginning of Bio 168, we learn a whole bunch of terminology. And so it's like learning a whole nother language. You know, we have anterior and posterior and medial and lateral and all of our body regions and our body directional terms. And there's so much terminology associated with A&P that it can be really hard for someone who's also learning English and then also now needs to learn all of these new terms. So it just can take a little bit longer to process the information. If it's possible, you can try to take classes with a friend who also speaks your primary language. I know that's not going to be possible all the time, but you can also talk to other students in your class or in your section and see if anyone else speaks your primary language, and you may be able to study together that way in your primary language, and that can definitely sort of help with the understanding. It will take a little bit longer probably, and you'll have to be really sure that you read the multiple choice questions carefully because they can be a little bit tricky, even for people who've been speaking like English all the time. So this semester, I'm really excited. The IELTS, it's actually the STEM Center, not the ILC. I'll have to change the slide. The STEM Center has a volunteer anatomy and physiology tutor who is also fluent in Spanish. So if Spanish is your primary language, that would definitely be a really good option for you, but this is not always the case. So you'll just have to kind of each semester look into it and see what resources we have available. All right. So let's say that now you've already registered for the class, but it doesn't start for a little while, right? So you went ahead, registered early. Maybe it's the end of the spring semester, and then you are registered and set up for the fall semester. So you have the summer to prepare. So first, if you've already registered, then you've probably taken the prerequisite courses, right? So check with your advisor and talk with them and see what is going to fulfill those prerequisite courses. Usually Chem 90 or one of the early bio classes will fulfill those. Sometimes if you've taken chemistry or biology in high school, those will fulfill those prerequisite courses too. But I highly recommend that you go ahead and review some material from your previous bio and chem courses. So the first 4 chapters that we go through, which is the first unit in my course, is the first chapter is kind of an intro to anatomy and anatomical terms, but after that we do a really quick introduction, like overview of all of chemistry, a little bit of biochemistry, and then like cell biology, like in 3 chapters in 3 weeks. So it's definitely helpful to overview things like mitosis, transcription, and translation, you know, the organelles in the cell, and some basic chemistry concepts. So if you can kind of get that review started before you even start the course, that'll put you kind of in a better place. So there's a great open educational resource that was created by Bronx Community College to help prepare for A&P. And so let me open it up. And I am really sorry, guys. I don't know when said that I'm not sharing my screen. So here's my screen. And I have a copy of this presentation so you can look at it. But here's my screen. I didn't realize it wasn't sharing. And so I'm going to go ahead and I have this link right here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it up so we can look at it. And so, oops, it's actually right here. And so this is an open educational resource, which means it's free for anyone to use. And so it's just going to be a PDF of this sort of A&P prep course that you guys can start looking over before the semester goes. And so it goes through a lot of the information that will be on sort of the first 4 chapters, 3 to 4 chapters of the book. And so you can kind of get a jump start on the first unit of Bio 168. And then it also has it breaks it down into sort of more simple terms, and it's got some sort of practice questions and learning objectives at the end of each. So this would be something that you could do to start looking over before you get into A&P. And they take a lot of the pictures and things from this, from another open educational resource called OpenStax Anatomy and Physiology. It's not the book that we use in our course, but it is still a useful resource to look into. So you guys can just go to this website and find that that sort of prep course, and you guys can look over that before class starts. The other thing that Wake Tech has is that Chem 090 is a developmental chemistry course that goes over some basic chem concepts, and they have made a massive online open course called the Chem MOOC, and it is available on Blackboard now, and we are working with Blackboard and advising to get everyone who registers in Bio 168 to also get them into the Chem MOOC so that they have access to those chemistry information. At this point, you could probably talk to your advisor, or Jason Whitehead is the professor that's sort of spearheading and in charge of this, and they can get you added. And basically, it's an open course. And you can get credit for it by doing a challenge exam after you've completed all of the modules. And you can go through and look through the course and sort of practice some of the chemistry concepts before we get into our A&P. Does anyone have questions about those yet? So the Chem MOOC will be on Blackboard. So once again, this is all kind of getting prepped before you even start the class. Another thing that you're going to want to do is kind of start scheduling and organizing your calendar. Anytime you take a class, especially if it's online, like you need to make sure to take a calendar and schedule out some time to work. If you have full-time or part-time jobs, make sure that you let your supervisor know that you're trying to go to school, and hopefully they can work with you to develop a schedule that gives you time to attend class in person or virtually, and then also work on your all of the assignments for the class and studying. Now, if you are a primary caregiver for young children, especially, plan out when you will reliably be able to work. So this might be during the day when your kids are at school or daycare. It may be after the kids are in bed, but remember that you have to schedule time for sleep. And I have a lot of students that have a lot of responsibilities. They work, they have kids, and then they try to you get all of that done during the day, and then they try to do their schoolwork at night. And I have to tell them, you need to sleep. Sleep is so important. And if your brain doesn't get enough sleep, it's not going to be able to learn the material. And so you have to schedule that time for sleep and a little bit of time for yourself too, so that you don't burn out. And so the more you can develop your schedule before the semester begins, the better. A&P classes start fast. There's a lot of information. We have 16 chapters that we go over in Bio 168 in 15 weeks, right? The 16 week is going to be the exam week. And so we have to go over more than a chapter a week. And so it's a lot to take in. For an 8-week class, it's even more, because we have 16 chapters in like 7.5 weeks. And so it's, over 2 chapters a week. So it's a lot. So you want to make sure you have some time to devote to that. And that's this next thing. How much time will this course actually take? And I know that it seems like instructors are always saying, oh, you really need to spend a lot of time studying for this, but it is talking to students, like they really do need to spend a lot of time studying. And as we've sort of talked with our students each semester, and I've talked with the rest of the professors that teach Bio 168 and 169, that the key to success, or at least something that's important for success, is having enough time to actually learn the material. Obviously, you still need to study and you still need to work hard and do the assignments, but if you have enough time, then at least you're giving yourself that, the time and the opportunity to do it. There's a lot of students that are really smart students and they really are working so hard, but they have so many other things going on in their life at that time that they just physically do not have enough time in their day to have enough time to, go to work, take care of their kids, make dinner, do everything else that needs to be done, and have enough time to, complete the homework assignments, read the book, and really understand and really learn from this course. And so for an in-person class for Bio 168, you're going to spend approximately 3 hours per week in lecture and 3 hours per week in lab. It's a little bit less than that. I think it's usually it's 2 75-minute classes, so it's like 2.5 hours in lecture, but then you're obviously going to spend some time commuting. And then lab is about 2 hours and 50 minutes, which is close to 3 hours. So I'm going to round up to about 6 hours just for the sake of easy math. And so the rule of thumb is that you really need to spend around, for every 1 hour in class, you should be studying and doing assignments for 2 to 3 hours outside of class. And this depends on your background and how much experience you have with A&P before, right? So if you've already taken an A&P class, you have a good background in science, you may take less time, right? So you may be on the shorter end of that. But if it's been a while since you've been in school and you haven't had science classes in a while, it may take you a little bit longer, towards the 3 hours outside of class. So you want to sort of err on scheduling more time than you think you might need. And that way you'll hopefully have some time to study and prepare for the test. And so when I say study, I mean doing the assignments, because most professors don't just assign things to have you do them. They assign them because they think they're going to help you to study. And so I have like smart book assignments where you have to answer a bunch of questions, making concept maps, reading the text, quizzing yourself, studying for tests. All of this is going to count as studying. So completing assignments, in my opinion, is like part of studying. It's a way that you can start studying. So for a 16-week class in person, you're going to remember we said it's around 5.5 to 6 hours in class time. And so that's going to be, if we go on the long end of that, that's going to be scheduling like, 17 to 18 hours per week to study. Online, you have to do even more on your own because you might not actually meet. So it's going to be like that 17 to 18 hours a week plus the 6 hours you would have been in class. So that brings it up to 24. Now, this is where the crazy part comes in. For an 8-week class, you need to double that. And so it doesn't really, you might not think about it, but you're learning the same amount of information. You may have slightly less assignments because I know for my online classes, sometimes I make some assignments optional because I know just time, there's not a lot of time, but you're going to need to double that. So for an in-person class, you're going to be in class for 11 to 12 hours in the classroom. So you have 2 labs a week at 2 hours and 50 minutes each, and then you have 4 lectures a week at 75 minutes each. So that's kind of like 11 to 12 hours in class. And then, 18 doubled is 36 hours a week, which is a lot. And then so online, obviously, that's like over 40 hours a week to study. So it's like a full-time job. So that's why I say for an 8-week class especially, I'd say like you should probably just take this one class, make sure that you have enough time to really absorb the information. So as I said, time is really a key to success, because if you don't have enough time to interact with the material and you don't have enough time to sit down and like focus just on studying, because it's really hard to study when you're watching kids. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. I know it's really hard to get anything done if you're the person who's in charge of them. And so sometimes it's not even as much about how good you are at studying or how much you learn, but just like how much time you have to devote to it. And so once again, we come back to making a schedule, which is going to be really important. You want to make a study schedule and try to stick to it. Put your study time on your calendar. So like write it out in big letters. Don't change it. It's easy for other responsibilities to take precedence, but you have to find time somewhere to work in this class. As I said before, don't forget you have to schedule time for sleep and a little bit of time for yourself. The easiest way to create time is to put it on the calendar and don't schedule things over it. Obviously, things come up, especially if you have a family. There's something happens at work and you have to take extra shifts, but do your best. But do your best to keep caught up. The other thing is try not to get behind on your assignments, especially in the beginning, because it's really hard to catch up. Once you get behind, like it's kind of, you're behind with 1 week and then you have to try to finish that. And then you get behind on the next week and you get behind on the next week, and everything really builds. So each chapter is going to build on the chapter before. So understanding and finishing your assignments on time, so understanding chapter 3 is going to be really important for you to understand chapter 4 and so on. So I always recommend for assignments, start early and practice often. And make sure to stick with your calendar. Anyone have questions about making schedules? I know a lot of this is not anatomy specific and it kind of goes with all courses, but it's just very important for anatomy because it is so much information, and it's just, there are a lot of assignments and a lot of learning objectives every week. So the other thing I really recommend that you do early and often is to get expert advice. So if you're confused about something, I really don't want you to be, sitting at home trying to study it and not really understanding it, because that's like a not very efficient use of your time. And I already said time is really important. So we want to use our time as efficiently as possible. And so if you're confused, the fastest way to understand a concept is going to be to get help. You obviously, there is something to be said for productive struggle. So you try a little bit first, try to understand the concept. The more you struggle to understand it, as long as it's not too hard, then it'll help you retain it in the long run. So try on your own a little bit, but once you figure out which concepts are, the concepts that are kind of sticking points, then go to office hours, right? Your instructor is going to be sitting in office hours waiting for you to come ask them during that time. So even if it's just a Teams chat, you can get a fast answer, or if you like a virtual meeting, and if you're in person, you can go to their office. And what the thing I like about Teams and what I tell my students is if you're working on something and you have a question right then, you can just type it into the Teams chat, and then I'll get to it whenever I have time. And that way you don't forget it, because sometimes you have questions and then you forget to ask them. The other thing that is really good is that Wake Tech has an ILC. It's called the Individualized Learning Center. And the Individualized Learning Center is really just like free tutoring. And so I totally recommend that you take advantage of this free tutoring that is offered by the college. And I'm going to pull this up over here so you guys can see it. And so the ILC, right now, there are some in-person appointments as well as virtual tutoring appointments. So you click to the ILC. This is A&P, so we'll go to Sciences Tutoring. We have online tutoring, which I think is really convenient. In-person tutoring at the RTP campus, and then in-person tutoring here we've got at the Health Sciences campus. So the Health Sciences campus especially has a really strong ILC for everything like biology and anatomy and physiology, because that's where most of the nursing classes are found. And so they have tutors that specialize in A&P, anatomy and physiology. They also have all of the models that we use in lab, or at least many of the models that we use in lab. And so you can make an appointment to go and see the models. Especially this is great if you're in an online lab and you don't actually get to go in and see the models all the time. Or even if you're an in-person lab, if you miss it or you don't really understand that model very well, then you can go to have a tutoring session and you can have a tutor go over the models with you or go over any of those physiology concepts with you. And so it's free service, and I totally recommend that everyone use the ILC. The other thing is the ILC is not only something that students who are struggling use. Usually my best students are the ones that use the ILC. And so some people feel like, oh, I don't need the ILC. I'm not struggling that badly. But the ILC is something that everyone should utilize. And as I said, a lot of times it's my best students that are using the ILC, because even if they don't have a question, they can talk to the tutors and sort of explain concepts to them, which increases their confidence that they understand it, as well as, let's say they explain a concept and the tutor's like, actually, that's mostly right, but here, this is one little thing that you have wrong. And so they can really sort of understand the concepts better. Teaching a concept to someone else is one of the best ways to learn it. And so if you have someone at home you can try to teach it to, that's great. But if you don't, or if, the people you have at home won't be able to tell you if it's right or wrong, maybe. So it's really great. You can make an appointment with the ILC and then talk to a tutor and try to teach them the lesson that you're learning. And then they can tell you if you're right or wrong, and they can help you with any of those sticking points. So as I said before, the ILC is not something that is only for students who are struggling, and it's not something that you should wait until you're really behind, like, oh, you failed the last 2 tests, now I should go to the ILC. You should start early because you want to get ahead of it. Once again, it's free tutoring. Go ahead, take advantage of it. The other thing is the STEM Center. So the STEM Center is going to be staffed by faculty and bio faculty, anatomy and physiology faculty. Right now we have it MS Teams or by appointment in person. And so you can look, there is a calendar online that you can find when an A&P tutor is going to be there, and you can go and ask them questions. And the nice thing is that it might be your instructor, it might be another A&P instructor, but they're faculty here. And so they're kind of going to be able to answer your questions. So if your instructor's office hours don't work out and you didn't make an appointment for the ILC, you can just jump into the STEM Center. The virtual STEM Center does not require appointments, so you can just go in, find when there's an A&P tutor and go in there. And that's a great way to get your questions answered. Now, the last thing is that something we started right before the pandemic, and we've been trying to continue as we can based on social distancing, is open labs. So open labs are, I have my open lab on Fridays from 10:45 to 12:45. Basically, it's just time when I am sitting in the anatomy and physiology lab and ready to answer questions. It's pretty much like having office hours in the lab, but this way, when students come, it's a bigger area, more students can come at the same time. They can even I have some students that study together during open lab. Right now, we're social distancing, but hopefully it will get a little bit better in the future. Open lab is a great place to ask questions about the models. My class right now is online, so the open lab is a good way for the students to be able to actually come in and touch the models and see the models. There's also, I'm on South Campus. There's an instructor on Perry that has an open lab and an instructor on North Campus that has an open lab also. And so every semester it's going to change. So you'll just have to look that up for each semester. Do you guys have questions about that? Sorry, let me pull up the chat and see if I missed anything. Okay, someone had a question. Sorry, it's a little while ago. What is the difference between Bio 163 and Bio 168, 169? So the main difference is that Bio 163 is one semester with a lab. And so because of that, we can't cover quite as much in depth. Like we don't go as much in depth to the physiology in Bio 163, just because there's not really as much time. So we have to cover the whole body in 16 weeks, as opposed to Bio 168 and Bio 169. It's a 2-semester A&P course. So we cover the whole body over 32 weeks, right? So 2 semesters. So we get, it's a lot more in depth, especially physiology wise. And we have more time, so we have more labs. So you get a little bit more information about the anatomical aspects. Sorry, that was a question from a while ago, but I just saw it in chat. No problem. Does anyone else have any questions? Right. And then after that, we'll move on to just some tips for studying in general. All right, so now that you are in the class, right, let's say that you registered and you're in the class and hopefully you've prepped and you've done some, review of some bio and chem concepts before you've come, you kind of get thrown into it. We start with the first lab on that first week and it can be a little intimidating. And so here are just some tips that we've come up with over the years, how to learn some of the lab material. In general, in lab, we focus more on anatomy, identifying structures, labeling structures, understanding how they relate to each other. Whereas the lecture focuses more on physiology, the little tiny things that happen at the cellular level often. So for lab, some things that can be really helpful would be drawing the structures. So whenever you have a diagram in a book, if you sketch it out, that's a good way to sort of activate, it's like kinesthetic learning, drawing the structures. Label your drawings or label pictures like in the lab manual. And then there's also some really great anatomy coloring books on the market that you can purchase from Amazon. There's some that are like $15, $20. The coloring can be kind of soothing, but it can also help you learn some of those locations. But also it's nice to try to learn the location of structures in words. So if you can describe the location to someone else, that may help. And you're going to have to practice spelling the terms because our lab practicals are generally going to be fill in the blank, and you're going to have to spell it correctly, and spelling counts. That is also sometimes a problem because even native English speakers often are not the best at spelling, and most of these, like I'm not the best at spelling, and most of the terms actually take their spelling from like Latin and Greek roots, and so they don't always follow normal English spelling rules, and so spelling can be kind of complicated. And so practicing spelling the terms is important. Another thing that you'll need to be able to do, and another like a good skill to have, is to look at a picture in the book. Excuse me, I'm gonna mute real quick. Is to be able to look at a picture in a book and then look at a model and figure out how the model and the picture are related. So be able to like look at a flat picture of a muscle cell and then look at a model of a muscle cell and be able to sort of relate those things together. And then you'll also have to be able to relate that to the images from APR, which is the virtual cadaver dissection program we use. Because when you get to, clinics, as you go into your health professions, you're going to have to like relate these models and images that we learned in the books. You're going to have to relate them to your actual patients, right? Nothing looks exactly the same in the actual patient as it did on the model or as it did in the book. So you're going to have to start training your brain to like recognizes those similarities and differences. So even if in one diagram the lysosome is yellow and the other diagram it's in a slightly different spot and it's orange, realize that they're both lysosomes. It's just that they are drawn differently. And so this is kind of a good time to practice that in lab. So relating the pictures to the models and relating those to the cadaver dissection program. And then eventually we'll have to, when you get into your future healthcare career, relate those models to your actual patient. Great. So much of the lab is matching vocabulary with physical structures. You'll need to be able to find it on a model or a picture, but you should also be able to verbally describe where the structure is. And so putting those two pieces together in your study and you'll be off to a great start in lab. So these are just some practical lab tips. So again, lab is a little bit more memorization heavy, whereas lecture is a little bit more physiology heavy, and that is often going to be more like understanding the concepts. So we'll go on to a couple of tips for learning the lecture material. And so some of the tips that some of our instructors have come up with, write notes from everything. So lectures, videos, and even homework assignments. And there have been many studies about writing notes out versus typing notes. And it is better to take notes slowly. And generally, this is going to be writing because you can't write as fast. When people type, they just transcribe. And so it's kind of like they hear it, they type it out, and they don't think about it. Whereas because you write a lot more slowly, you have to sort of hear it, process it, summarize it, and then write down the summary in your notes. So the hearing it, processing it, and summarizing it is really important for your brain in order to understand the concept and in order to like get it into your long-term memory. Because if you just type it word for word, it's kind of like it goes in your ear and out your hand, and it doesn't actually enter your brain. It doesn't enter your consciousness as well. Another great thing is to draw diagrams. Research shows that even poorly constructed pictures are better than just writing it out. And so diagrams are really great for showing relationships between things. As I said, drawing is great for lab, but it can also be great for understanding processes in lecture. Like I draw out the, when we talk about muscle contraction, I draw out all of the ions and all of the ion channels, and I have everyone in class draw it with me, and we say, this is what the action potential does. And so we're drawing this whole thing out. And I'm hoping that that's helpful because it is more active. So anything you do that's active is better than passive. So whenever you answer questions, that's more active than just reading the book. Drawing a concept map or putting information to a table is more active than just watching a video. So you might start with reading the book or watching the video to try to get an introduction to the information, but then you're definitely going to want to do some active studying. And so that would be writing your own notes is active as long as you are not just copying what you see, but you're actually paraphrasing and summarizing. And that's important. If you can make a concept map or make a table, reorganize the information, all of those are very active. Your brain is using and playing with that information, making connections. That's going to help you remember it better. You're also going to want to test yourself. So don't just practice putting information into your brain, right? Reading it and watching it is kind of like you're entering info into your brain. You also have to practice getting it out again as well, because on the exam, right, we're going to ask you questions and you're going to have to write it out for short answer questions, or you're going to have to pick an answer and commit to that answer for multiple choice questions. And so one of the ways I like to have students test themselves is to pick a topic. Let's say the topic is calcium regulation. And so write that at the top of your paper, and then just write down everything that you can think of and remember about calcium regulation. Like make sure your books are closed. You're not looking at anything. Write down off the top of your head, just a brain dump of all the information that you know about calcium regulation. Use like one color pen. Then open up the book, open up your notes, and check yourself. See how you did. Look, take another color pencil and mark out anything that's wrong and correct it. Add all the details that you missed. And so now you figured out what you knew about calcium regulation, and then you've adjusted it. You've added things to it. Now you have a really good study resource that you can study from. And then you can study that resource. And then later in the week, you can try it again and see if you remember more this time. Because it's really important to like listen and understand the material, but when it comes time for testing, you're going to have to be able to write it out, right? You're going to have to be able to take that information back out and use it or apply it in different ways. The other thing is that your brain really likes a variety of inputs. So verbal, written, tactile, colorful, pictorial. And a lot of times videos are good because you have sound, you have visual, you have words written there. But it doesn't matter what you think your learning style might be. Pretty much all the brains like a variety of inputs. And so you want to make sure to use lots of different study methods. Read the book a little bit, watch some videos, but then make sure you use those active studying methods. And each new method that you use is going to help build connections. And so you're going to connect new information to something you already know, and that'll help you remember info more easily. And so you want to definitely not do as much passive studying like reading or watching, and do a lot more active studying like making concept maps, writing out tables, writing out summaries, and testing yourself. So that's kind of, and these study tips kind of are general study tips for everything, but I think they apply even more to A&P just because it's a fairly challenging subject. And so a lot of people have to find new study habits that they didn't have before just because there's so much they need to learn. All right, questions? You can ask questions now, or my email is on the screen. You can send questions there.